Today we're going to look at how to achieve the moving comic book effect that was done in my most recent short film, Kung Pao. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with any video I'm dropping. Let's do it. So right off the bat, I'm just going to say to accomplish this effect, it's going to take a lot of tools, and I'm going to assume that you are not new to After Effects. I'll go through everything, but I'm also going to use the assumption that this isn't the first time you've opened After Effects, because this is going to be a process. So this is what we're making, as you've already seen, and with this clip, you'll see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots in total that we're dealing with here. So before we even start editing, I just want to say, if you were to do this effect, you need to plan ahead of time. You need to know exactly what you're making. You can't just get these shots and then get into After Effects and be like, okay, let's see what kind of comic strip can we make with the shots we got. Plan ahead. It's gonna make it a lot easier. It's gonna make it a lot better on set. Also, just with like this green screen stuff, knowing what background you're gonna put there, it's gonna be easier for the light, so you're gonna get a way better effect. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create the full layout composition, what that window is going to be. So it's not going to be a 16:9 aspect ratio, but the full comic strip that's moving around. So we can just drag any clip into the new comp, create a new composition, just so we have a composition with the proper settings of this footage. And you can see here, this is a 16:9 aspect ratio. To be more specific, we filmed in 4K. This is 3840 pixels by 2160. So what we need to do is, we have 3 clips that are all beside each other. Those are the 3 in the comic strip. All those 3 are gonna make a aspect ratio of 16:9. So what we're seeing right here. But then we have the one on top, one on the bottom, which is cut in half of what a 16:9 is. So basically we need to make our aspect ratio 2 16:9s on top of each other. So basically the width is gonna stay 3840 and the height is gonna be multiplied by 2, 4,320. And now we have, this is gonna be our window. Let me just take that off. This is our composition window that we are going to fill now with this comic strip. So now let's make a new comp. And we'll use the food again because that is what we're going to work with now. So we got a new composition here. Now we're going to create this composition aspect ratio to be the vertical 1/3. So if we right mouse click on timeline, composition settings, see the width is 3840. That's what we need to change. The height's gonna remain the same. What we have to do though is take 3840 divide by 3. So take your width, change it to 1280. Hit OK. Now we just adjust our clip to the proper framing. And that framing looks solid. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add this, see this text right here? It says smack. And you can see here when the food falls down, it's hitting the ground, it's going smack. So we're gonna add that in, all right? Let's go to our text button up here. We'll type out smack. And we're gonna be using a font called MV Bowley, I guess is how you pronounce it. I'm not really sure. All right, so what you want to do next is Control-Alt-Home, and that's going to make your anchor point dead center. And then we're going to make this a 3D layer. All right. Then hit R to bring up your rotation options. So you can rotate the X axis and the Y and the Z to match the ground. So once you have that, just right mouse click on your timeline and then go to New Solid. We're gonna make a new solid. Black is fine. In fact, it's what we need. And now just this little eyeball right here, select it to make it disappear so it's not seen. And then select our pen tool, okay? Now we're just gonna draw out these lines you see right here that are obviously giving the comic book effect of a smack. So once you've drawn them all out, and make sure again with these lines you're still maintaining that perspective as if it's on the floor, just select the eye, so they're back seen, and now we can see what we've done. So now we need to create a mask on our text and lines to make it seem like it's underneath the food, as if it's actually on the ground right here, as you can see. So let's just select both our solid and our text, right mouse click, pre-compose, and let's name it just smack text. All right, and now let us go back a little bit. So right here, it's still good. And what I like to do is at least go to the middle point, so like somewhere right here, and create a mask around the food, and then we'll work forwards and then work backwards. It just helps with the anchor points you make. If you work right from the start, sometimes you have to just keep adding anchor points or taking some away. And let's make a feather on it of 5, just to give it a little bit of softness. And then you're just going to go through frame by frame and adding your mask. So if you hit mask M, you're going to see mask path. Make sure you click that stopwatch so you make a keyframe. And now let's just go through real fast and create this mask. And once you're done, you can just go back and check it. So yep, that looks solid enough for this purpose. So the last thing we're going to do with the text is we have to make it appear at the proper moment. So if we scrub through, by the way, I'm hitting page down button. Page down and page up button is what has you go frame by frame. If we go through right there, that's where we want to go in. So Control-Shift-D, it's going to cut your clip in half and leave this little part down. So I'm just going to delete that. And now we have it appearing. Boom, perfect. So the next little thing we're going to add is our little line detail. We can see here as it falls, we scrub back through here. As it falls, you can see these movement lines. Make sure you don't have anything selected and no clips or layers selected, and go to your pen tool and then just draw a straight line. And now go to our shape layer. Well, first of all, we don't see anything. That's because our stroke is on 0. So let's expand our stroke to, let's say 20. And also let's make the color black. And if we go to our shape layer right here, let's name it Food Movement. And in Contents, we go to Shape, Stroke, and Taper. I guess is how you pronounce that. And what we can do is we can affect, you can see here, just that straight line. So for the start length, we're going to put it at 85. End length, we're going to put it at 25. And then for the end ease, which just rounds out the end or start, whatever you're using, we're going to put that at 100. So then you're left with this nice little droplet shape. And then what we do is, let's go back through. If we select our thing, again, Control, Alt, Home, it's going to center point your anchor. It's going to be a lot easier with things. And we scrub through until the food's out of frame. Let's take our little shape here, drag it out of frame, click P, add a keyframe, and now let's move ahead in the shot right there. Let's go one more. Looks good. And now let's just move it down. And now we have that movement. All right, so go back to your first keyframe as well. Click T. Keyframe the opacity. If you hit U, you're going to see all your keyframes. So we're going to go to the last keyframe and take the opacity, bring it to 0, and now select your motion blur and make sure your motion blur is being shown on the preview. And now if we hit play, you can see you got that nice little line detail. So we can take this, cut it right there, and then Control D, duplicate, and then what we can do is if we just say, let's just say, we want to make more of them. Okay, I want to take this and I want to take another one and move it right here. Well, you can't just grab it and move it because now you have your keyframes, and now you've keyframed from here to there back to the beginning. So what you want to do is just take these little squares right here represent the keyframes. Just take it. This is your last one. This is your first one. Boom. Duplicate again. Last. First. And now you got 3 of them before you know it. So for the last thing we're gonna do with this clip is effect, stylize, cartoon. And we can see here you got all this like nasty black lines all around it. Don't really like that, so if we go to edge and threshold and just bring that down until you like it. I like that. Everything else I'm honestly good with. And then we have our first part done. So in our comps folder, you can see here we have the food falling full. I'm gonna take that and drag it into our full layout and now just align it to the left. So align left. If you don't see this align window in After Effects, just go to Window and then you'll see it's the first option, align right there. So it's just gonna move your image right to the left right there. And now we have the first part of building this whole comic strip. So now let's go to the second thing, which is opening up the empty container. We're gonna create a new comp, but instead of dragging our footage into the composition button, we are going to just click it because it is always gonna create the previous comp that you were just working on. It's just gonna do the exact same one if we just click it. So all this should be the same. And let's name it empty box full. Hit enter, and now you can see we have the vertical composition. So let's import our footage to the timeline and then adjust. Okay, so now we have the container centered and looks good. Now there's one issue here. I had to shrink the footage down so we actually see the whole container because I didn't like it being cut off. And now we have these empty spaces. So how do we fix that? Right mouse click, effect, stylize, CC RepeTile. RepeTile. It's like repeat. And then on tiling, it says repeat. Set it to unfold and then expand down, expand up. We're gonna just expand down until it's got the frame and expand up. Now you can see here expanding up works really well because it's just solid color, so it blends right in. Expanding down, we are mirroring my hand and my arm right here. However, we can see in the final, that is still the case as well, but you know what? It's so fast and no one's gonna really notice it. If you did, good for you. So now what we're gonna do is we wanna add this mystery question mark within the box. And you can see here it's staying with the container. So we need to create a null, attract null to our container. So just double click and you can see it's brought up into its own window now. So you get your tracker window over here, click track motion and a tracking point is gonna come up. And luckily for us, all these little food droppings of juice are perfect tracking points. So let's just do one of these dots. And if you're wondering about options within the tracker, what I like to do is if we click the options here, instead of adapt feature, let's go to stop tracking. That means if the confidence is below 80%, it's just gonna stop. So if you walk away from your computer and you come back, you don't have like a horrible track, it just stopped. And now we're going to track it out. So we have all the tracking points we need now, so we right mouse click in our timeline, click new, null, we're just gonna make a new null object and we'll name this container track. So if we go to our tracker window up here and hit edit target, you're gonna see here that it's already connected to the container track. It's targeting it. Now we just have to apply. And so now it's going to apply all the tracking information to that null. So now let's put our question mark in the frame. You can see I have a different one than the actual thing. I thought I would make this exciting, unique. And let's just get it into a position that we want. I'm fine with that. And now take your little pick whip tool here on your layer and then just whip it, click it, pick whip it right to the null, the container track. And you'll see the question mark is now tracked to the container pretty well. So make sure to add motion blur to your question mark to give it more realism. And now the next thing we need to do is put a mask on the question mark to make it appear as if it's inside the container as we're opening it up. So same thing as with the smack text. We're just gonna add the mask and then go on. All right, so let's check it out. Boom, perfect. So now we're gonna add a shadow to the question mark within this area right here to just give it a little more realism and a little cooler effect. So if we Control D to duplicate the layer, go to the bottom one, we can delete the mask on that layer, we don't need it. And now we have this one, so let's make it a 3D layer. If we rotate it back and then around right here, about like that, looks great. So if we right mouse click, Effect, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and let's just bring it up a bunch. That's good. And then let's set the opacity to something about 75. And I tell you what, let's even bring the blur even more. And now let's stretch it out a little bit, just like that. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a mask just to cut it off of the box, because we can't have the shadow right here. That doesn't make sense. And if we just check that right there, looks good. And then we can just copy and paste the cartoon effect as well. So let's go to the full layout. Let's go to our empty box composition and just bring it in to the full layout composition. And you can see here it's already centered, it's already good. And yeah, so now let's do the third one, which is the timer. Okay, so we have our composition, we have the clip in, everything looks good. Now if I center the clock, you can see with our movement here, it looks pretty solid. But I just want to show you a little trick to even make it better. So this little red dot here, it's a great tracking point. So if we have our clip selected and we go to Stabilize Motion, all right? We take that tracking point and put it on that red triangle. Let's put it right at the top. And now let's track through. And once that track is done, we hit apply. Now what it's done is it's made where we put the track point on this red triangle. So if I put my mouse there, you can see that point stays in the same place. And what that does is allow us to have the timer be dead center the whole time, because where we move it, it's just gonna stay right there. So now we're gonna add these, I guess you could call them anime lines, the shaking all around. So select your pen tool and let's just draw one triangle, one of those points, just like that. And you can see up here our options for the shape we just made. The fill, we want it to be white. And for stroke, we don't want anything. So just drag it all the way down to 0. And now we have this nice little pointed triangle at our clock. And I'm actually going to make it a little more skinnier. A little more skinny. Sorry, pardon my bad grammar. Now if we select our shape layer and we go to Contents, we can see Add is right beside it. So hit the arrow and let's add a repeater. Now let's make sure the repeater is under the shape and not in the shape. You can see how you can put it in. So make sure it's underneath it. Now with the repeater, it's gonna repeat the shape you just made. So let's make 20 copies. So now we have 20 of those triangles. And if we go to Transform, have the position both be 0 for both values of your position. And now the rotation, now if you see here our anchor point, it's going to rotate around our anchor point. So let's make the anchor point dead center of the clock, okay? And now it's gonna be right there. So dead center of that clock. And now if we rotate it around, there you go. Let's see, that's 18. You can adjust it however you want, but there you go. That is the lines all repeated now. So now we're going to go to the Add again, and we're gonna add Wiggle Transform and make sure that's underneath the repeater. And basically what this is gonna do is just make the shapes vibrate. So this right here, wiggles/second, that's how many times is it shaking per second. Let's just put it at 5 for right now. And then if we go down to Transform, this is where it's moving in that wiggle. So right now if we hit play, we see it's not shaking at all because we haven't given it any values of what where we want it to move. We need to tell it how we want it to move, because right now it's not moving at all. And if we move the position, you can see they're moving. But what helps it better to see what it's actually doing is let's turn on our motion blur, which we do anyway. And now if we move the position, you can see that blur beginning to show, because that's showing that it's wiggling right now. For this one, I like to do the position just slightly, but then mainly the rotation. Again, just slightly. I'm only on 6. Then if we hit play, you can see it's really slow. It's like, so let's put the wiggle / second. Let's put it to like 50. And now, boom, that's great. So now let's hit S to scale, and let's keyframe the scale. So hit the stopwatch, and we'll take this keyframe, we'll drag it out here because we're going to use it later. Now let's go forward in our clip and see where we want these to appear. So we hit play. Right there is where I would want them. So we're going to scale up right here until it's out of frame. And then we're going to take the other keyframe we already made, and we're just going to bring it closer. Select both, right mouse click, keyframe assist, easy ease. That's just going to make it a more smooth, smoother movement. I can't figure out my English. Like that. So that's the movement we got. And now we're going to add these little vibration lines that are coming off the timer. And that's really simple as well. If we deselect everything, make sure everything's deselected when you select your pen tool to create a shape, because if you have something selected, it's going to create a mask. So make sure everything's deselected. And let's just create this nice little crescent shape around the timer. Like that. That looks good. Alright. Now let's make sure the anchor point, let's go to the end of the clip where it would start ringing. Let's make sure the anchor point is dead center of the timer. And now let's scale. So S, keyframe scale, and go ahead 3 to 5 frames. And then just scale it up to about 140, at least right there. So instead of easy easing these, we're gonna select scale, and then right here we have our graph editor. I'm gonna select the graph editor, and we are going to, so this right here, if we see, these are our 2 keyframes of the scale. Now this is the speed, so this is the final one. If we take this and we drag it down, and if we take this little anchor point here and stretch it out, you're gonna get this nice curve. That's just gonna give us a nice smooth movement, if we can watch here. So it's almost like whoosh, instead of or it's whoosh. Does that make sense? And then go to your first keyframe, hit T, opacity, keyframe it. Now go to the final keyframe and bring it down to 0 and turn on your motion blur. And then we're gonna get this right here. That's it, that's what we want. So now if we just duplicate, Control D, we can create another one, and then just hit R to open up a rotation, and just rotate another one anywhere you want on it. Right there is good. That's why it's important, again, to have the anchor point center of this timer. So now we have 2 of them. And now we can just duplicate as many as we want until we're happy. So now let's go to our full layout, and let's select our timer full composition and bring it into our full layer composition. So we just go to align and we do align right. And now we have the first 3 clips of our comic strip done. As you can see right there. So now to the last 2. This one we're going to drag our footage into a new comp. Now remember, for this one we're going to need to cut the composition in half horizontally, so it's going to fit perfectly into these 2 slots. So that's what we're going to do. So we go to composition settings. The height is what we're cutting in half. So 2160 divided by 2 is 1080. And there we go, there's our composition. Okay, so what we need to do first obviously is remove the green. So we right mouse click, effect, keying. We're gonna go to key light. We're just going to take the drop here, select this. And you can see here it says final result. Let's change that to screen matte so we can just get a better picture of what is going on here. And if we select the screen matte right here, now we have our tools. So clip black, that's gonna bring the black more in, and then clip white, if we bring it down, is gonna bring more of the white. So really we don't need to worry too much about the white, just a little bit, but really it's the black we want to worry about, and we just need to get enough that you don't have this faded type pixels around our subject. So about like right there looks solid. And if we go to final result, I like to select hard color as well. I tend to like to do that. Sometimes it changes, but for this one, yes. And then if we right mouse click, effect, keying, key cleaner, and then change the additional edge radius to 1. And now we take the clip and just add a mask around our subject. Make it pretty wide because he is moving. And there we go. So now let's drop the image that we want from behind and just adjust it however you see fit. I think right there is pretty good. All right, so now we're going to put a cartoon effect on our dude right here. His name is Neil in the film, so we'll call him Neil. All right, so you can see right here, way too much black lines around him. We're going to take the threshold and just bring it all the way down to 1. That's where you don't see anything. So the shading smoothness in our cartoon effect is what you're going to want to adjust the most, because if we go all the way up, it doesn't really look like a cartoon effect anymore. If we go all the way down, you can see it's a little too much. So if we go somewhere like 75, I'm happy with that. It's subtle, but it works. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this layer. And on the bottom one, we're going to go to Effect, Generate, Fill. And we're going to make this fill black. And then you can see here we have a nice little black shape of him. And we're going to go to Effect, Stylize, and then CC HexTile. So now we get all these black hexagons. So if we go to the smearing and we just expand it, you can see here it starts to shrink to where our subject is. Now these hexagons are still too big, so we need to go to the radius and we need to bring them down. We'll bring them down to a good 9. Looks good. And then let's bring the smearing further too. And now let's just move our shape just slightly behind and to the right or the left, any way. And that's going to be our shadow, and it gives that nice comic book effect of a shadow. So next thing we're going to do is going to add new adjustment layer, and let's put it right over top of our background here. And what we're going to do is going to Effect, Blur, Camera Lens Blur, and let's put it to like 15. And what that's going to do is, even though it's a photo, it's going to give the illusion that we actually went and filmed there slightly, because now the background is out of focus. So what I like to do now is select our rectangle tool, and create a mask of our adjustment layer, and then set the feathering to 100. And now you can see we have this out of focus shot, but the wall is in focus as if that's where he's standing. So it's just a nice little detail. So the final two things that we did to the shot involved outside plugins that cost money, which is Video Copilot's optical flares, and then it's not really a plugin, but the Action Essentials pack with an atmospheric haze. If you do not have those, I would suggest getting them. I have had them for years now, and I have non-stop used them. They have got their money's worth. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add these little like smelly air effects of these little white lines coming up. That is very easy as well. If we go to New, Solid, let's make it white. Okay, and let's I like to just turn it off so you don't see it, just to draw the shapes. And now just draw these upside down curvy raindrops basically. So those look good for now. So now we have these 5 little stinky elements. So now if we go to our rectangle tool and create a mask, let's just do a rectangular mask all the way across, outside of frame, underneath. And we go, it's called Mask 6. It's the last mask. And instead of add, let's change it to intersect. And we have to actually bring it on the window just a little bit for it to work. So you can see here, the masks go away, but if we take this rectangle mask, you start to see them. It's intersecting with it. Makes sense. So if we keyframe that mask at the beginning, and let's go just a couple frames ahead, and we move up, you will get those little movements. And we can add motion blur, and now you get that little movement. Now, what we can do is we can take to the end of that clip, cut it, delete, and now, as we did before with the vibration on the timer, we just duplicate and just do it as many times as you want. So let's just go ahead and take that shot, and let's bring it into our composition, and we're going to align on bottom. So for the final shot where he's all famous, this top one right here, and the flashes, there's literally nothing new in that shot from the previous one, except for these little flashes, which is literally the exact same effect as what we did with the vibrations. So I'm gonna go ahead and just not explain it because there's nothing new to explain. So what we'll do is we'll just duplicate this shot right here, duplicate and act like that's the one, and we would align it to the top. So you can see here now we have our full layout of the comic book strip that we wanted to create. And now we just need to create borders for it. These borders we see right here, these white borders, if you look close, there's a little bit of like light texture. So if we're now in this composition, if we go to new solid, let's create a white solid, let's turn it off, and now just create masks around each clip that are going to be that border. It can be jagged. I liked it jagged and the shot, so little almost like ripped paper. Okay, so now we have all our masks, and if we turn it on, you can see that we need to select them all and change it to subtract for all of them. And now we have this raggedy border going around. Before we go any further, if anyone's wondering, hey, you skipped the little 1 year ago and the you know, that little aspect, that's literally just a white rectangle with the same font we were using for the smack typed on there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this light effect that we created with stop motion. I have another tutorial on this channel about how we actually did this. So the shot's this right here. We have this crazy light show going on. And if we take that shot and we put it underneath the white solid, and let's expand it all the way up. And then under track matte where it says none, just create alpha matte to the white solid. And now you're gonna see it all inside the mask that we just created. Now, it is only this long, so one little quick tip with that is if we right mouse click on the shot up here, we go to interpret footage, main, and we loop it. Let's just loop it 25 times, okay. And now we can extend it out. So let's change the light layer. The blending mode, let's change it to add to make it a little more glowy. And then let's copy and paste the white solid, and on top, just so, because right now, I mean, it's a border, but we can see right through it. So let's, you can see I just duplicated it, but there's still no white on top. That's because the eye is deselected. So now let's re-add it, and then let's open up our masks, all of them, select them all. In the mask expansion, we need to bring up in the number. And you can see here, it's going to shrink down the white, but still, so now you're starting to see that little light effect that we added. And so we can still hide where the borders are for our different shots here. And now if we take that shot, duplicate it, let's take that, put it behind the light, and then the top one, let's effect, generate, fill. Let's make it a blue color. You can make it whatever color you want, but blues were one of the main colors in this film. And let's select the blending mode for that to overlay. And that's it. That's how we were able to get that nice little border effect there. So the final thing that you would do is you would have this whole shot right here, and then you would create a new comp, one that's of a normal aspect ratio. All right, I just dropped a shot in there to get it going. Let's delete that. And then if we take our full layout composition and put it in there, now we have this ability to move this composition around anywhere we want, keyframing it exactly how we want it to show every different aspect of the comic strip. Now, to get the timing of the shots right, because if you hit play, you can just see they're all going at the same time. What you want to do is, these top and bottom, we know they're not even going to be seen until it actually moves down and then moves up, so you don't even need those right now. The first one that's going to be seen is the food falling. So the food will fall. It's right there, Control-Shift-D. That's where I want it to end. And if we cut it right there, right mouse click, time, freeze on last frame. And now you can see it is frozen on that last frame. And from there, on that frame that it froze on, take your next one, so the empty box, drag it forward, and that's where this one will start. Now, to fill in this space right here, we're just gonna duplicate, and then on the bottom, right mouse click, time, freeze frame, and now we have drag that forward and cut that. So we have this nice little freeze frame waiting for its time to shine. And then again, so we have food fall, thing open, and let's freeze right there. So again, we cut, right mouse click, time, freeze on last frame, and you just do that for every single shot. And this keyframe right here, this is the keyframe in which the frame is freezing for the rest of the duration. So you can adjust that where need be, and you can adjust the beginning where it needs to be to properly execute the timing just right for the effect. Because you can go to, you know, this shot right here and simply have all your movements keyframed and everything, and if something's not right, it won't, what you already did here won't be affected, just to go back and adjust the timing on these little moments here. So that's it. That's how we were able to get that effect. I hope that helped. I hope I didn't go too fast, and I hope I didn't go too slow. Not really sure where I was balancing there. I'm new to all this, so just let me know if there's any big issues that you're seeing within these videos. And also let me know if there's any other tutorials that you would like me to do, and make sure you hit that bell notification, stay up to date. Thank you, and good night.